And we are back, and right now the conversation that we are about to have is on substance abuse and recovery, mainly recovery because September is the recovery month, and we are just looking into, for those people who have been addicted, who are addicts rather of drugs and have been abusing drugs for years and are trying to get out of it. Is it possible or is it not? As the recovery month is coming to an end, it is only right for me to have in studio people that can tell their own stories. And joining me right here on my immediate left is Anne Matthew, who is the NACADA Board Vice Chair, and she is also an alcohol recovery. And also I am joined by Boniface Ndirango, who is the chairperson, Addiction Prevention and Recovery Association of Heroin. Association of Kenya. I'm sorry about that. It's the heroin that's in my mind. And not, okay, I said that very wrongly. I'll take my words back. I take my words back. It's the fact that he is a recovery addict from heroin and many other substance abuses. You've said more than 10 drugs.
Yes, I'm a poly addict.
Woo.
We call them.
Okay, so the discussion is starting right now. And if you may, I may just begin with you, Anne. Can you just tell me how that was for you? How did you get into addiction, alcohol addiction?
Okay, thank you for having me this morning. Yeah, my name is Anne Matthew, a recovering alcoholic. I'm sober. I've been sober for 18 years now, and I'm also the vice chair NACADA Board of Directors. It started when I was a young girl, and I got my first drink from my dad. I got my first cigarette from my dad when I was about 10 years old. So actually, children will take drugs from people they trust. In fact, actually, they don't take drugs from strangers. For a child to take anything that they are not used to, or anything that they are not knowledgeable of, it will take that person, first of all, to establish a rapport with that child, for that child to accept gifts from them. So most of the people who introduce children to drugs are people that the children trust. So you see, like my dad giving me alcohol, but no one saw it being bad. I never saw it.
I can imagine. How was that? How was he? How did he get to a position to decide to let you try alcohol, to let you try cigarettes at only the age of 10?
He was an alcoholic. He was a functional alcoholic himself, and being a functional alcoholic, we say addiction is a brain disease or brain disorder. So first of all, my father was a very sick person. So whatever he did, he never saw anything wrong with him. Because he used to tell me, when you grow up, I want you to be like me. So he was my role model now in even cigarette smoking and drinking. So it was not an everyday thing, but then later, as we say, addiction is progressive. Later, when he died when I was in Form 1 in 1977. And so I didn't go for loss and grief counseling. I never processed that loss. And so I started now sneaking alcohol and drugs into school. And that affected my education, and I failed my exams, and I was in Gandu Girls. And so I joined Kenya Polytechnic, and the same thing happened. Being a government-sponsored student, we used to get a boom of 500, and that was in 1981. So that was a lot of money, because alcohol, a bottle of beer was going for 3 shillings and 50 cents. Yeah, so I was one person that was seeking attention. I was an attention seeker. And I didn't care whether it's negative or positive, as long as people stopped on their tracks, just because of me. So I started organizing for dancing competitions in the colleges in Nairobi. In 1982, I enrolled for Miss Kenya beauty contest. I came second. So I became a model, started modeling for African Heritage. I made advertisements, made calendars for different companies, and I had a lot of money and a lot of free time, because now interest in college. I didn't have any interest in college. And because now I was getting a lot of money at a very tender age. And that is what actually messed me up. So even when I got my first job, in 1983, and actually lost that job because of drinking. And that's the same year that I got, in 1983, my firstborn daughter. And also relationships had a contributing factor to that. And that's why we say we cannot pinpoint as to what the real contributing factors are towards addiction, because there are so many along someone's life. So toxic relationships, one, I was abandoned by the father of my child. So again, I was in a new town, a new mother in a new town at a very tender age. And then lost that job. Then I got another one in Pan-Afric. 3 years down the line, I lost that job because now my drinking was so bad, I had to drink in the morning in order to function. So I used to have very bad withdrawals. And so I used to drink in the morning, actually, to be able to function. And to go through the day, I had to conceal alcohol in the water system of the toilet because I was in the housekeeping department.
Okay. If we may get the story from you, just how did you get into drug abuse? You've abused so many drugs, you know. which one started and how did you get into it?
Just to pick up on where Ann Martha was left, my first influences of people that, just like she said, people that I valued and people who could influence my own behavior. There was this guy who I used to play football with. He was a star playing for the national team. I was a soccer player myself. I was at the age of 17. And he had undue influence over me. Peer pressure is a serious thing for kids between the age of 16 and 24. And we see that is why a lot of young people at that period of time are very vulnerable. I was no exception. So we started off with, things that look harmless, a puff, a cigarette, during the holidays, little mirror, looked hot, but they were doing it, so I could pass a few and I would try. Then one day he decided that he's going to give me a treat. He had come from Southern Sudan and he had won a competition, and he decided to take me out to Hilton to have my first beer. It looked very harmless because it was coming from a tap. I was used to beer that comes from a tap. So I thought, now I'm growing up, These are the same people who influence each other. And people of influence are usually family, friends, people we look up to, and during that age we are trying to. So that's how I got started. It wasn't long. The same person who gave me my first cigarette, my first mirror, my first alcohol drink, also gave me the first shot of heroin about 8 years later, in a very moment of we had lost somebody we really loved. And people think it's all about fun. Sometimes it's about loss and pain, emotional pain, like Ann Matthew mentioned about unprocessed grief. The death of my auntie, who was very close to me and who had taken care of us when my mom died, when I was very young, really kind of was too heavy to bear. Just thinking through a traumatic childhood, neglected upbringing, and the potential for a young person who is going to school, who is playing good soccer, who is also smart in class. I was okay. I was in Sarajevo Boys Center. I went to the University of Nairobi. I was playing for the national team by the time I was 18. So my star looked bright. But the challenge of peer pressure, the challenge of starting to use, and the onset of illness, because I developed asthma because of smoking, contributed to my downhill trend. And for the next 10 years, in my 20s, were the worst downhill you can imagine. Vivian, if I told you I've lived in these streets for 3 years, you can believe. I've slept under bridges, slept homeless because of heroin addiction. So like yesterday I was watching clips of the heroin epidemic in Mombasa. I was one of those people. But now I'm 20 years clean.
20 years.
Chairperson of rehab centers in Kenya. I've helped thousands of people, more than 5,000 I can count. I have 6 rehabs of my own. We have brought together all rehabs. We are working very closely with Anne and Nakada to bring up, and that's why we are excited to be here, to bring up the hope, that actually we do recover. And I'm not the only one. We are so many. Yeah? I've gone to conventions where we are like 30,000 of us, people in recovery around the world. Yeah, one day it will come to Kenya, and I think we a world convention of people in recovery, people who actually quit, and we are so many. Some people prefer to keep anonymous because sometimes of the stigma, but we are quite a number of us who make it. So if there is any addict out there, any addict whatsoever, or alcoholic, or gambler, or sex addict, whichever addiction, the truth is that we do recover. And if you apply yourself, you can recover, and we can help you. Maybe this is a discussion we can start on. What are the next things we need to do? What are the support systems available? What can we do to ensure that less people are exposed? How can we intervene earlier? And those are the things I think we'll be very happy to look at.
Speaking about what do we do to intervene earlier, because that was my next question. How do we avoid getting into drugs? How do we go about that for someone who's not into drugs at all, but just for them to know that, for them to keep, to prevent themselves from getting into it despite the pressure, probably they're in campus, and in campus there's too much peer pressure. How do we go about avoiding?
Very good. And you want to? Oh, I'll go for that.
Oh, okay. By one, public education, awareness, creating awareness about the effects of drugs. And then we, like Nakada, we have age-appropriate programs that are running in schools. They've been brought to the schools, and so we want to start educating children as early as possible. Because you see, it's like the parents have neglected the children, not neglected per se, but has left the children to the teachers, to the teachers to do everything. So every time a child does something, ati huu mwalimu wao, hii shule yao, that is not the thing. And then we also have another program called positive parenting, so that the parents should create time to be with their children, create a rapport whereby they can actually discuss anything with their children, and mostly about drugs, about sex abuse and all that. Yeah, so primarily it's public education, awareness, sensitization, and programs in schools. We are also working closely with the faith-based organizations, because at least the pastor meets the congregation at least once a week. So those are people, that's a platform where we can actually make use of, train the faith-based leaders, so that they can take the cascade, the message down to their congregants. Yes.
What are the dangers of abusing drugs?
Wow. Yeah. Just to add a little bit of what Anna said,
yes, please.
Before I move to what you asked about the dangers. Building on just what she said, there's about 100,000 health promoters that are coming up in the next, I think, launched by this government. It's a big population of people that I suspect Akina Ann can really use to influence the prevention programs, because these people will have, almost every health promoter will have only 100 homes to look at. Now from those 100 homes, it is very possible to start identifying some of the risk factors if these people are coached properly, because risk factors are evident. There is a science to prevention. It is possible to just look at a population and know, here we are going to brew quite a number. We are brewing crime, we are brewing rape, we are brewing because of the risk factors available. You can just see them. And we start to mitigate against those risk factors, community-based approaches to reduce risk. And to increase what she also said, the protective factors. What are the things that are available for people who eventually are able to manage or whether through peer pressure, substance abuse? What are those things? Recently, I was talking to a friend of mine who I asked, by the way, we have been in recovery for a long time. Have you ever seen us, we were asking ourselves, have we ever seen a scout, a Boy Scouts, who has come to our program? And we were finding it so difficult to get a child who went through the Boy Scouts system. So what is it? Those are the things we need to look at. What is it about those programs, about SCAD, about Boy Scout, Girl Guide movement that creates a level of knowledge and skill level that help these people navigate the pressure. Well, the dangers of drug abuse are many, and first off, personally, because I was a former heroin injecting user, I shared needles. That's the time I got a disease from the needles. It was called hepatitis C. That was a serious thing. I thought it was going to kill me, but fortunately we got medicine for it. So I've had medicine for it. That's one. There are people who share needles and get HIV. You know, there is a lot of trauma around first time. You know, you don't have to have a serious heroin addiction for you to start experiencing some of the dangers of addiction. A lot of times, and we don't have interventions for this, and I'm hoping NACADA is going to develop early interventions in college-going students. That's the first time they go to drink. A lot of girls lose their virginity at that time, and planned by boys who give them drinks, make them so drunk, and use them during that period of time. They think it is fun, but it is a serious trauma for that girl. Very serious trauma. So we need to start developing interventions and awareness of even first-time use and safety nets, community safety nets. And those are where the community health promoters will come in. You know, we train them on how to reduce harm as young people experiment, how to be there and to be available. I've been trained in Israel, and that's a big program they have. Because you know young people will always experiment. Young people will, you know, people will drink. They started drinking long time ago. They used to drink. Now what can we do to reduce the harm? And that harm is the one that sometimes leads to addiction. Because if you have a traumatic event happen, like for me one day, we lost someone. We lost somebody. Somebody's girlfriend was raped and he committed suicide. So those harms, and on this road of Nairobi, if you come over the weekend, by 5, you know, those accidents have been cleared because of traffic. They have to clear them quickly. There are quite a number of people who die 3, 4 a.m. driving, coming out from a rave, dying. People don't get to see it because it has been removed by traffic. Yeah?
Okay.
Quite a number.
I'm being told we need to wind up, and I feel there's a lot we've not gotten to touch on. I feel like there's so much we've not touched on, but we need to wind up. I'm being told I need to finish right now. So I think we'll find a day to come continue with this conversation, because there's still a lot we need to talk about. What about a person who is in recovery and they relapse? What about them? How do they get back? You know, the stigma behind recovery, and people who have been able to recover from this particular vice, which is drug addiction. When they come back to the society as clean people, do we accept them? You know, we'll need to find time to talk about all this. So I think you're okay with us finding time some other time?
Yes.
All right. We have to finish this discussion right here. Thank you so much for tuning in. Do enjoy the rest of your viewing.